My name is James Word. I'm the VP of AI Product Management for Wowzer. And we just launched our new platform 30 days ago. So it's brand new. But our users have already generated 1 million images. Think about that for a second. 1 million images, thanks. 1 million images in 30 days. And this is just going to explode more and more. So this is the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night, is who are these people? And what images are they making? And what are they doing with these images?
I feel
Seriously,
attacked.
I mean, we know who Craig is. And his images are incredible and amazing. And he has these guardrails of keeping it in-house, right? And those questions about legalities and indemnification issues and privacy and all of that, for us, unfortunately, at Wowzer, becomes a bigger topic, right? Because we're now allowing our users to take these images and do anything they want with them. So our team comes from basically advertising, media and entertainment, and the corporate marketing. And we're all very clear about exactly what the creatives and producers in those industries do with those images, create the images, how they release them to market, and have their own brand protections behind all of that. So that part isn't the edgy part. The edgy part for us is like, oh, there's this whole general audience, and we have users from all around the world that are coming into the platform, generating images, and then using them for who knows what. So that's what we want to talk about today. And given that context, what I'd love to do is actually, let's turn off the projector. Let's see, is this the button for this?
There you go.
Oh, there we go. There we go. Because, when we're talking about controversy, this is a human conversation. So let's take the technology kind of out of it for a moment. And boy, oh boy, what have we gotten ourselves into? I mean, AI is going to destroy us, right? We're going to all lose our jobs. We're going to end up living lives that are like isolated in front of our computers on online social media and just being completely inundated with misinformation, deep fakes. And then we'll be lifeless blobs in our chairs, like floating, looking at the screens and just waiting for the message to come down from the corporate AI that's reached this level of general intelligence, right? Or wait, is that the machines are going to take over and then we'll become their batteries? Yeah. So, and both of those stories, both Wall-E and The Matrix, are actually full of lies and misinformation and half-truths, because not all of that is true. But the interesting thing from my perspective is that they're using these artistic license. They're putting us into this suspension of disbelief for an artistic effect that is actually useful. And it actually is what they're doing, and their heart is in the right place. The writers that create these stories, they're saying, knock, knock, wake up. Hello, are you in there? Look around, see what's happening, what's actually happening around us. And more importantly, what are you going to do about it? And I think that's a good message for us today, especially with generative AI, is what are we going to do about it? The cat's out of the bag. There's no putting the cat back in, but we need to figure out what to do about it. So what I'd like to do is go into the controversies themselves, and I'm just going to lay them out, and then these poor unsuspecting guys here are going to have to answer some hard questions. Okay? And I'm happy to answer them too. But basically, the context, and as I was going through my research on this, I realized a lot of these controversies have always existed through communications and art in human history. It's just becoming more pronounced, more intensified. So we're talking about things about misinformation and propaganda, right? That's existed long before AI came around. We've got always the debate about censorship versus the freedom of expression, right? Those boundaries, where are they? fakes and forgeries have been around for a long time. We have appropriation and cultural appropriation issues for many, many years. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, classism, stereotypes, prejudice, and obscenity. Like, when is obscenity groundbreaking versus just reprehensible? And then patronage, privacy, ownership, indemnity. These have all been through all of art history, have been a big part of the story. And then technological advances that have led to job loss. I mean, from the printing press to film and TV to Photoshop. Yeah. This has been a thing where each level of technology has caused this job displacement, and people that have either had to embrace the new technology or find another career. Now, the other thing is there's even the environmental impact of art has been known, like from the paints and the colors that have actually poisoned the artists or poisoned the environment versus the use of silver in filmmaking process, right? Very toxic chemicals in printing and film for many, many years. So there's even been those environmental impacts. And now AI comes up, and here we go. Now we have a whole next round of the same human story. And again, the question is, what do we do about it? So with that, let's ask some questions. Everybody, please, you met C. Craig, and this is Gabby Hoefer from IBM, and Eric Weaver from the ETC. Pleasure to have you guys here. Let's ask the first. I'm going to ask the top, what I think are the top 3 questions just from the get-go, the top 3 biggest issues. And if you think of a bigger issue, please let me know. But I'm thinking the biggest issues right now for us are deep fakes, bad actors, and job replacement. Right? So.
In no particular order.
In no particular order. But actually, so I'll ask C. Craig first then. So with the advent of AI training tools, because you were talking about the training tools, you even showed some of his training his own likeness, right? And this is also for text, it's for image, it's 3D and video. What guardrails do we need to put in place to protect against non-consensual use of our likenesses?
That's a far bigger question than I know I could wrap my head around, but I could give you some of my thoughts on it. Whatever makes artists feel that the exchange is equitable, right? That they're, I think I'm in favor of the black box kind of being able to know where images are pulled from, or what percentage, and things like that. And then the decision of what, if any, compensation comes at whatever level, right, and things like that. And I do know something like Adobe Firefly, which allows people to opt their images out of the scraping and things like that. That all seems like ethical movements forward, right, from my purview.
Yeah, I like that. Gabby, do you want to take a stab at it?
Only this? Yeah, definitely. So I think that there definitely needs to be some kind of guardrails, and we've been working on that as well. So one of the big things that we just put out was design principles for generative AI. This is, for designers who are making these products, and there's 6 different ethical considerations around that. And I think that there's kind of like 2 sides to this. There's the product side, which is, where I fall and where designers like me fall. But then there's also the other side of like more of what you're getting at, the user, where did they come in, and what should they be able to do? What should they not be able to do? And so that's we're kind of addressing both of those in the principles I just discussed.
So I have to start off with, these are my opinions and not the companies they represent.
Well said.
But I think Project Firefly, just like C. Craig pointed out, is absolutely a good representation of what is allowed and what is not allowed. They've begun to create the guardrails that say this is in or this isn't in. And like C. Craig pointed out also is that when we're doing some of this stuff, it does become tricky to find origins and other things, So that's why we're taking that as a base level and doing our own work on top of that. Like, we're creating things fresh from that perspective where you can see it. What I do also find interesting is, I don't know if anybody knows this, but Sora is absolutely not being released till after the presidential elections. They see that this is the largest shift in history of leaders across the globe, and they don't want it used to manipulate elections or influence folks. So they are paying attention to that. And you do also raise a really good point about the environmental impact. Sora is looking to use cities of computers to build what they need. The actual founder is looking to raise $7 trillion to pull Sora off. Trillion, as in T. I think the most valuable company in the world right now is what? Microsoft at $3 trillion.
Wow.
But yeah, that's what he's after and what he's expecting to do. So it is not a small feat that would be pulled off with what he's doing.
Yeah, that's a lot of data centers and power, right? Consumption.
Yeah.
And that's the big controversy with generative AI, is the amount of power it takes to produce these images, and the carbon footprint of that power. Now, I think a lot of the good news is, maybe not for Sora, but for some of the other generative image models, is that they are becoming more and more efficient. So pretty soon we're going to have models that are 10, 20, 30 times more efficient than the current ones, and producing the same level or better level of quality. So that's really going to help with the carbon footprint quite a bit. So, all right. Bad actors. Gabby. We'll let Gabby take this one.
Oh, thank you.
Because these guys think of bad actors as different things.
Facts.
True dat.
So where do we draw the line between freedom of expression and harm? Like, how do we navigate bad actors, deep fakes, imposters, violence, hate, and misinformation?
Oh,
Think of that, Gabby.
oh, lucky
Small
me.
topic,
Yeah,
small
small topic. All right. So the first question is, where do we draw the line? I think that's like a moral and ethical, a greater than I type of question, right? Like, I think that's something that we as a society need to come together and answer. So I'm not going to answer that today.
Fair point.
That's another way of saying that. But I think that what we can do more on the product side and on the side of people that are like, actually building something. I think that we can include explainability, and we can have certain explanations that surface and that say, maybe this isn't coming from a credible source. Maybe this is coming from something or somewhere that isn't ideal. And I think that that's one way we can show the users that they shouldn't be just blindly trusting everything that they see. And so even if we're not solving the problem of who's a bad actor and how do we get rid of them, we're at least showing them, here's some media literacy, here's how you can use this product without, blindly trusting it and just having this kind of like full faith that it's all going to be honest and truthful.
Yeah,
I
well
have
said.
a monkey wrench to throw into our equation with that, because I actually do spend a lot of time thinking about when tools like Sora are available. There's either it's going to be open AI or it's going to be some other company that will become the arbiter of what is real to us. And that is not the best place to be in society. So we'll have to think about, these aren't doom and gloom things. These are things that we need to understand and to be preparing for, because I guarantee there's no society that you want one particular entity telling you what's real and what's not real.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah, there are definitely certain organizations out there that are tracking authenticity or origins of content and trying to make it a bigger issue there. So it's been a challenge, again, like you said, historically for a long time. I believe it's fairly public knowledge that the Russian groups have actual groups that just create propaganda. That's their whole job, is to create propaganda 24/7 and then feed it into systems that people run with because they don't know where that authenticity is or that it's not even real in any way. So it's certainly going to require a level of sophistication on the consumer end that's tough to.
Yeah, well said. I think it's going to also require some sophistication on the technology side. A couple of positive things I've heard recently is like the camera manufacturers have all gotten together and they're putting these digital watermarks into images that are created by cameras and the CCDs on cameras themselves. So you'll be able to know if this is a real image or not. So that's like the other side of it, right? It's like, is this real or not? And then also related to deep fakes is kind of, like what C. Craig was doing with his own likeness and his own image. If you're training a model like that, then how do we actually track the origins of the intellectual property and keep that information flowing through the entire chain into the model and then also in the output of the model where you can audit that whole chain of custody, if you will, right? I think that'll be a big advancement once we can get there.
Three things from this weekend, though, is there's a product out in the corridor called Click, which is all about being able to just download an app and take photographs and copyright the so it authenticates it. And also it's Adobe and Sony cameras have done that technology you're talking about. And then what was really interesting this morning with X have actually released a product so you can check the authenticity of the posts.
Awesome.
Which is good to see people like that at least trying.
And Dolly's also integrating its own watermark inside images created by that as well.
So. Yeah. So it's nice to hear that sort of things happening.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's great. All of these technologies are exactly what we're looking at putting into the platform.
And then we have the problem of human confirmation bias.
There's going to be that, yes. do you want to take that one?
No, it's just like, like all of these fail safes don't matter if I don't believe.
Right.
So.
Right. An image has, that's the thing. A picture's worth 1,000 words, right? Freedom of the press belongs to those who own one, that sort of stuff. And how just one image flashed before you just for a few seconds can have this deep visceral impact that you'll never forget. And whether it's a real or it's a fake, whether the intentions behind it are good or bad, or the impact is actually good or bad, we don't know. So that's where I think a lot of the solution will have to come from. It's almost like fighting AI with AI. So you have some AI automated moderation tools that can help, filter some of that out. So it's a challenge for sure. It's definitely a challenge. So job displacement. We all like this one. So how do we put artists in control of the technology? How do we compensate artists whose works have been used to train our AI models? And how do we protect the intellectual property of that generated content?
So I guess I'll start with the displacement. I was recently on a call with one of the CTOs of the studios, and we were talking about how much this empowers the creative and how they can see their vision, how through a whole, and this was animation oriented, so we were looking at how throughout the whole thing, different aspects are beginning to change now. And the whole thing he kept coming back to was, but is it going to displace my people? Is it? And they are genuinely concerned at the senior levels about this. But if you work with a lot of creatives, you'll find that they want more and more iterations always. They often are not finished. They want to keep going. I don't think a film actually gets finished ever. I think that almost everyone I work with, C. Craig's way too practical and amazing, but are still always nickeling and diming things and changing things, and it's part of the process. So it's tough. How many more iterations will this give you now versus what is it going to displace? And that is a tough call.
For me and for my team, I had the profound honor of having to give this same type of talk in front of 40 directors a couple of days ago, right? And at the end of it, one hand went up in the back and he was like, well, this is going to take our jobs, right? And I was like, oh, no, because we're here to look out for each other's jobs, right? It would be too heavy for my shoulders to try to hold the entire industry, but I could hold my team. Eric holds our team. We started, we're probably utilizing more of these tools than any other film in the country, and we have the same amount of people that we started with. There's every single job is full of a living, breathing friend It's a human. I know these people's birthdays. I know these, these people I laugh and joke with. They're on text threads with me. I will protect. I hold the door. You get what I mean? And if I can do that for my team, and you do that for your team, and you that for your team, then this becomes less of a problem. But it also doesn't become one that's so heavy none of us can hold it. Right?
Yeah, I think that's well said. And then one really cool article I heard was an artist, a fine artist, painter that was using generative AI tool to feed all of his artwork into it to train it, and then he was using the tool to explore all the different possible boundaries. And at the end of it, his take was, you know what, this saved me so much time. We just went through so many iterations of the artwork that I would never have been able to complete those explorations in my lifetime. And it finally is allowing me, because as an artist, you always have in the back of your head, oh, but it didn't quite get to the vision that I wanted. It didn't quite get what I wanted to achieve. But he felt like he got a lot closer by using the tool to explore.
So in the animation exploration we had, we found that the average animator was doing anywhere from roughly 12 to 14 seconds a week. That's their life. 12 to 14 seconds a week of content. And the very fastest people were pushing around 28 seconds. How hard would that be, and how much discipline would that require to just sit there day in, day out, and just do that minor tweaking to get that further?
Yeah, amazing. Yes.
I really blame a lot of this fear on Arnold Schwarzenegger. Because to me, it's tools, and every time new tools come out, you adapt to them. And if you don't, then you won't get work and you'll be left behind. And so it's a new set of tools, but we're all walking around with these old science fiction tropes that have really made people afraid, deeply afraid of the future and the technology. And so you're walking around with people absolutely terrified that their lives are going to end, that something horrible is going to happen, when the truth is, this is like what Photoshop was or whatever. Now, yes, it's moving really fast, and it's kind of dangerous because of the bad actors, not the performers, but the bad actors. But the reality is, it's your responsibility to keep up with your career and your skill set and to learn the next set of tools. And just keep evolving. So for everyone to be panicking, I think is lazy. And I don't mean to blame anybody, but I just think, stop watching science fiction and move on with your life.
Yeah.
It's just like
Or watch better science fiction. Yeah, please.
I was actually we had a similar conversation on this today about all the negative dystopian ideas, but what I look at it is this: where else in history, if you're a solopreneur who's a creator, who doesn't have the ability to move fast, to do things and make an impact because you're solo, you'd have to have this whole team. What AI does, and is so magnificent, is it takes a big idea person and gives them legs to be a bigger idea person and have a bigger voice. And to me, that is the most exciting opportunity for the creator that's the genius that never got the right break.
Yeah.
And that's, to me, at that level's the playing field. If you're willing to play big with your big ideas and learn the systems and create the other people, you have just turned yourself into the big idea person, and you get noticed now. So choose the technology.
Yeah, well said. And I think what you're pointing to is this type of democratization that's happening with the technology. I mean, I talked to a
there's masters out there who never get noticed, whether a writer, whether they're an artist, whether an illustrator, whomever they are, they're big idea thinkers who can't get noticed. Now they can make emanations and they can speak louder and they can connect bigger than they ever have been before, where we can create a utopian society relationship with AI, where those voices maybe got silenced. Now we can be big speakers of a better world than we could have ever imagined, because we can free up time to create the world we want rather than to be in survival mode.
Yeah, well said. As long as we can balance the issues and the positive sides like this, right? And try to swing that balance. however we can and wherever we can do it. Yeah, please.
So I have to kind of defend myself a little bit proactively. I have a bachelor's degree in science fiction, but specifically dystopian. But awesome. So fear is false evidence appearing real, right? And the only way you overcome fear is through education. It's through not just training the systems and putting the technological guardrails up, but it's about educating the general populace in a way that as this becomes more and more present in their worlds, that false evidence is not only apparent, but that the fear over all of it is broken down because of knowledge, because that ability to recognize is there. In my opinion, the biggest thing that we're fighting right now is that we have a generation that doesn't know technology, that doesn't know what those limitations are, and doesn't know what the realities are. We have a generation coming up that has accepted what they perceive to be. And so asking them to think critically is part of that.
Yeah.
So my question honestly would be, if we're going to protect our jobs and we're going to protect the usability of all of these tools on a consumer level, how do we educate that and create that boundary against fear?
Yeah, that's very wise, and I want the panel to answer that question, because you're talking about, as a society, having critical thinking, right?
Yeah.
And how do we foster critical thinking as part of our responsibility of putting this stuff out there, right? And so I'm really curious, maybe from Gabby's perspective on that.
From Gabby's perspective. Okay, I actually really love this question. Thank you for asking it. So there's two ways to educate people, right? There's the traditional way, you go to school, you read a book, you figure it out, you take a test. And then there's the way that I think we should do it with AI. And that is more about embedding it into the product. So you should be, when you're coming to that screen, that chatbot, it should be telling you by design, this is how you use it. These are the limitations. These are the things that it does really well, or the types of prompts that you should put into it. And I think that that's really the best way to teach media literacy and to kind of help people understand how to use this technology in a way that is positive and doesn't, have as many negative effects.
Yeah, well said. Anybody else want to take that one? Yeah.
I guess just getting your hands on it, touching it, playing with it, finding the reality and the limitations. As he said, a hammer doesn't build a house. Somebody wielding a hammer does. And there's that advocacy or that learning curve that you realize this isn't perfect. This doesn't do things for itself. Just taking it in a pure theoretical format is too obscure. I will also have to comment on what you said before. It's out of the bag. I was at a great conference recently, HPA, out in the desert, and the comment came back was, and they were talking about how wonderful Oppenheimer was, and he's like, guess what? This is like Oppenheimer. It's out of the bag. We can't put it back at this particular point. It's going to move forward. And another thing he cited was a video of Adobe, as Lori had mentioned, being first released. And the other people being interviewed were in utter panic over a tool like Adobe being released into the public. And it was amazing video.
Yeah, I think I saw that at Finny Festival. It was about Adobe Photoshop and how there was this huge outroar of like, wait, you can fake images and fake photography.
I mean, for me, the only thing that I'll add to it is I imagine, hopefully I'm wrong, but I imagine a lot of the education that's going to come is the stove is hot, right? No different than Oppenheimer, like stove is hot, right? And once you see the type of damage it could do, people start to respect the tool more and have more reverence towards it. But I'm just going off of humans.
Yeah.
Right. Right. No, that's stove is hot is one of the first lessons. I've got a 2-year-old. I know.
So, I've just over the past 10 years, I've been building remote teams for people, virtual teams, primarily teams in the Philippines. And so I've always seen companies worried about losing their jobs. And over the past year and a half, I've done over 100 consult calls with companies how to do AI. And just to bring it into a practical level, whether it's a small, medium, or corporate enterprise, the way that there's hard conversations happening at HR departments with their C-suites all around about how do we how do we do this without making people think that, hey, we're replacing them? And it's always about a productivity gain. That's the most positive message you can do, is just say, but it's also very challenging and you're going to lose people. What happens is I'll come into a company, we can easily get 20 to 40% increase in productivity by a single human using augmented AI, right? Whether it's voice, whether it's text, whether it's image generation, whatever it is. I would say 20% is an even low number of increase in productivity that a normal human can do using generative AI. So what's happened is you're seeing, different benchmarks of what they're expected to do. And something that I found really interesting was how many people are reluctant to use AI. So, I think that's a barrier that we have to do, especially in the creative side. I come from the marketing world, so a lot of copywriters are still very egotistical, I guess you could say. So they believe that the AI can't actually do their jobs, and very quickly they're finding out that it can. So I think there has to be an interesting balance about reality, and sadly, dystopian fear is a reality as well. I mean, there's some fear that's not a reality, but there's definitely some real risk.
Yeah, totally.
So I actually like to bring up one really kind of cool shift. We were working on Fathead, and what we learned in production design, especially in regards to virtual being or digital doubles, is that Marvelous Designer or cost simulation is replacing sweatshops now in Indonesia. They all have computers now. They're building this in this new digital world, and they've transitioned. And I got to tell you, those guys probably make more and have a better life as that transaction has occurred. And I apologize, I have to get over to give a talk
please.
at the main conference center, so I'm going to have to step off.
Thank you, Eric. And this is another aspect I think is really interesting with the technology, is I believe artists and the tools that are coming up with generative AI, artists are actually going to be in more control of the generative engines than non-artists. Because if you can illustrate, if you can draw, if you have a vision, or you're an artist that has an inner vision about a story that's actually very compelling that you want to tell, and you have a vision of how you want to tell it, then you're using tools that can accelerate and bring that vision to life more and faster and more accurately. Actually, artists are going to be back in the driver's seat because they're going to be creating images and videos and generative content that is far richer than a general audience will.
I guess my hot take on that is I was in a conversation with this really fantastic VFX artist, Jim Godoldik, and he we were talking about AI, and he said that this is an advanced tool in capable hands, right? Which for me, I always looked at it as a performance enhancing drug, right? If you are a terrible writer, ChatGPT is not going to make you a good writer. Like if Shonda Rhimes starts using ChatGPT, we're all out of work for television, right? That's how it works. She's very good at what she does. If Taylor Sheridan uses it, it'll be a different type of, or Aaron Sorkin. So I do believe it is an extremely advanced tool, and in the hands of capable people, it's going to be incredible. And the story, and what do you do when people that have incredible imaginations now have the ability to show their imagination, and they didn't previously have that? So I would never want to be on the opposite side of stopping someone being able to express what's in their mind.
Yeah, because I think what it doesn't do is it doesn't replace mastery. I think that this is the age of mastery. If you've chosen to become better and become a master, however that looks, generative AI now supports you to be a better master. If you don't want to master anything, then maybe it'll raise the bar to okay. But I mean, this is the age of mastery. If you want to become the best of who you want to be, this is your time to shine.
Yeah, well said. I just had a conversation with a work colleague, and his nephew is a 14-year-old boy, and all of his friends and he get together and draw cars. Cool designs for cars. That's what they're into. And they got on Wowzer, and they're like, oh, wow, now we can actually say, well, I want this kind of car, and I want it to be blended with this other, and, futuristic, but retro, and, all these sorts of things, different colors, change the fenders and the headlights and the wheels and all this sort of stuff. And I guarantee you, probably one of those kids, I can't guarantee it, but probably one of those kids will grow up to be the next car designer, right? And they're now exploring their craft and the possibilities of that using the tool.
I mean, think about what all the other aspects they can learn at that age. By the time they're 12 or 15 or whatever, now they've exponentially moved their creativity to a next level that a generation before would have taken years.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anybody else? Controversies? Are we too positive right now?
More reinforcing us.
Back down into the
As a quick comment, I just wanted to say it was reassuring to hear. I was at a talk last year at Harvey Mason Jr. was there, the CEO of the Academy, the Recording Academy, which runs the Grammys functionally, and he was saying, looking back, like Mozart wouldn't say the Beatles sucked. It's like they were using different tools and just like operating in the zeitgeist of what they could make possible, and they were all clearly very talented people. So I thought that was profound. That stuck with me, so I like that.
Yeah, no, I like that. I'll use that in the future.
I used it in my talk earlier today.
Perfect.
Hey.
All right, so let's see. Anything left here that is... Okay, how about, we kind of covered this a little bit, but does AI actually enhance human creativity, or does it devalue it?
I'm incredibly biased to this. So I think it's an enhancement. It has allowed me to move through several genres where you would previously get stuck into whatever you had the opportunity to do first. Right, it opened up a lot of doors and a lot of and gave me the opportunity to meet a lot of amazing artists because I could meet them on their playing field with it. So
nice, but now here's the challenge question to that: or are we entering the realm of when the calculator was released and now nobody knows how to do math anymore, right? Because you're just doing it on the calculator. So maybe for more amateur artists, is it possible that we're actually devaluing or maybe unlearning or de-emphasizing the mastery and the craft of the mastery?
For me, I look at that hot take. That type of question, it instantly kind of gets me a bit on my heels about it, because that feels like when people said rap wasn't music. Right.
Yeah.
And it feels like when like the electric guitar is not music. It feels like the Gutenberg press. Like, why should the poor be able to read? What, you get what I mean? So like there's
or the Beatles with their multi-track recorders.
Yeah. So my answer is going to be like absolutely not. Right. Like so.
Yeah, I completely agree. Short answer, absolutely not. Longer answer is going to be, I think that this is an interesting kind of misconception that we have. So the way that these models work is that they just go out and they replicate old ideas that have been created, right? So they're just going out there learning, they're figuring out, okay, these are all of our past ideas, and how can we make something that looks kind of new, but it's really just built on the old stuff, for lack of a better term. And so I think that in the future, like when we start having like the next version of what the art style is going to be. So like, for example, in the past, we've had like the Renaissance era. We've had a lot of different types of art, and C. Craig could probably speak to that a lot better than I could. But in the future, I don't see AI as the driver of the next era of what art would be. I see that as like the human artist role. And I think that that's kind of where that boundary ends, right? And so I think that we can use AI as a tool, but I don't see it as this like huge replacement for what humans can already do.
Right, but maybe it'd be part of the feedback loop there. Right?
Maybe,
so
yeah.
pushing the boundaries with generative AI and the new kind of styles and ideas coming out of that then influencing master artists that then develop their whole new style.
Yeah, and maybe it's for showing, for ideating, for showing people, here are some of the different ways that you could go in this new direction or new style of art. But it's not going to come up with that brand new style of art. We need a human to be able to do that.
Right. Fascinating. Yep. All right, any further questions from the audience? Yes.
I do have a quick comment to answer her question. You guys were talking about calculator. I remember the days when I was doing calculus by hand, and one of my classmates, like actually my entire class was doing it on calculator, and I was able to do that faster than they could on the calculator. But then 6 months later, I started asking myself why. Like, why would I want to expand all my brain power to do that when, what if I'm 2 seconds faster, right? Like, I would much rather, growing up by training, I was taught not to use calculator because it's cheating. But then I embraced the tool so I can use my brain power to do other things. And then again, to answer your question, and then in my past life as an engineer, I worked at IBM, I worked at Boeing. This may come as a shock to some of you, but Boeing was building airplanes on a spreadsheet. And when I saw that, I was like, wow, like, why do they need us? Just give it as a spreadsheet. 17 hours later, they have a new model for in AutoCAD or in CATIA, they have this new 3D thing. They say, well, that just build a foundation of the airplane. You can't go to production with that, but it's just to save you time. So I feel like AI is a tool, but if people feel like it's gonna overtake, our ability to survive, we're gonna become slaves. Again, I think the education has to come from all of us here. Like, in our social media feeds, we spread the more of a utopian concept than dystopian concept, because the dystopian concept, to me, even as a former scientist, I feel like it's really popular because it's really feeding off of human nature, right? Like, we tend to do more when we're scared of something than if we have something good to aim for. But in this case, I feel like if AI is the platform, the tool it's more like a wake-up call for people to pick up their game and do more, rather than feeling like, oh, I can just sit back and warm the chair and all of a sudden I have a paycheck. No, like there's so much more to life than just sitting around and feeling comfortable. I feel that people have a lot to offer, and if they don't feel that internally, I think AI is going to wake them up.
I mean, I love that, man, and the only pushback I have on any of that at all, because I think that's extremely true. The difference is, like, with my team in particular, the folks that I build with, we're like the Goonies, man. Like, we never say die. We jump in first. Like, and the great thing about jumping into the abyss with us is nobody jumps alone, right? So when I showed y'all those images, right, every single one of those images, once it got to my team, that concept got better, right? The humans involved made it better because they were like, oh, what about this? What about that? If they say something that doesn't right, like, oh, that's a different movie, but mark that down, let's go there. And then they get back on track, and then they enhance. And that's something that, I don't particularly have a want to have that conversation with, like what Scarlett Johansson and her, right? Where it's just like, oh, it's just this feedback loop of AI, but I would much rather sit down with my team, show them the starting point, and then they start to do their things, because I have never left a meeting disappointed, right?
Amazing. Yeah. Well, thank you for your time. We have more questions.
Sorry.
Please.
So
No, please, you're good.
Could the panel just pretend that you were advising the chief government regulator? What practical tips or wisdom would you share? Because I think Facebook at one time was a utopian concept that was going to advance democracy, and maybe it did some of those things, but they still hauled Zuckerberg in front of several congressional committees. They asked questions they should have asked 10 years ago or 15 years ago, before all the carnage on teenagers, especially teenage girls. So you're at the start of all this. Yeah. What would you say, hey, guys, keep an eye on these things as this all gets implemented? It's really exciting, but it's not just exciting.
No, I totally agree that regulation is non-existent right now. It's totally non-existent. I mean, we're still waiting for regulation for social media. So, how many years has that been, just like you said? So the first thing I heard was, like, I think the State of the Nation address, right? Biden's like, we should ban deepfakes, basically, right? Or using your voice, like, for your likeness. Regulation's extreme, but I personally almost want it, because if there is regulation, then it's all very clear. The playing ground is clear. All companies know how to operate within those guidelines and those frameworks, and there's some baseline from which we're operating. Right. That's my own personal take on it. I think it's a complicated topic, but I'm curious. Like, Gabby, you want to take that
I'm
one?
next. Okay, so speaking for my personal beliefs, not my company's, that's a really hard question. So I think that I think that you hit the nail on the head by bringing in the social media issues. I think that the first thing that we need to figure out, like before we can even figure out the copyright stuff, what it can be trained on, all of those issues, the first thing we need to figure out is who owns my data. Do I, as a user, own my data? If I go on Facebook, do they own my data? If I go publicly, who owns that and who needs to moderate that? And I don't have an answer for that, but I hope that somebody will soon.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think that one of the things that we should really be paying attention to and looking into outside of our own data is terms and conditions, right? It's kind of a joke to us at this point that we just kind of scroll through, click, agree, and then be like, what are they doing with my image, right? Like, we told you, fam. But the other thing is that we have to recognize, as much as I don't like to, I partition my mind for art and entertainment, and then whatever is going to be done with it to wreck the world, right? I can't think about that all day long, because crack is illegal and they sell it every day, man, right? So like it's a hard thing to just say once we regulate something, it ends instantly, right? So it's what can we do to help people feel safe? I live in a society. I think all of you live in societies, right? Societies have what the things that make them feel most comfortable. And this group of people now live in this particular society because these rules make them feel most comfortable. Whatever is the outlook of the community in which I live and the community in which I work that they feel comfortable with, I can excel in, because I had a professor that told us, let your limitations be your liberation, right? No matter what wind up being the rules, it's going to be better than zero, right? So if it gets rolled back more than what we have access to now, but we still have the ability to do certain types of images and certain things like that, it's still going to be the future. It's still going to be incredible. Whatever helps the society that I am a part of and whatever groups I'm a part of feel comfortable, I feel comfortable with. Hopefully that's helpful.
That was a perfect answer. I can't add anything to that. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. So in music, right? We have, so for like hip hop, like we have nowadays, anybody can go on YouTube, anybody can find a sample, anybody can download it, and they can get to chopping it up in whatever their DAW is, right?
Right.
But so we see that some of the major producers or whatever still, want to sample vinyl. They still want to hold the crate, look through the record stores or whatever it may be, right? To find that. So, and that just gives them a better feeling. I mean, all art is really about the feeling, right? So like, at what point do you, even knowing that you do have these tools like at your disposal, at what point are you just like, I know I can use AI for this, but I kind of just want to do it.
It's seasoned to taste, my brother. Like always, right? Like the best picture winner was it was shot on film, right? IMAX, but still film, right? So that's in part of who you are as a creative and what you love. Like having a tool at your disposal. Like right now, we could all use some type of AI to respond to all our text messages. I guarantee we don't. Right, but we could, right? That technology is there. It's been there for at least a couple years, right? But so just because something is there now, if you're an early adopter to those types of things, that's also what makes you the type of director that you are, or the type of photographer you are, or writer you are. So it's always going to be a personal choice and what you feel like advances your own storytelling abilities, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, nice. And I think there's also something that's like from neuroscience perspectives. There's been this thing with the computers and typing, and everybody's with their thumbs these days. But there's a whole movement of people that are moving back to paper and pen, and they're drawing and they're writing. They're even moving to back to cursive handwriting, and they're finding that actually helps the brain a lot. And you're actually building these neural pathways that lead to a lot more creativity. So I think there's a lot to be said about just kind of the embodied human mastery of something and what that informs you. So you said season to taste. So there we go, season to taste. Thank you, everybody, for your time. I encourage you, as a challenge for me, if you go into Wowzer. You can start for free, and you can just try prompting the edgiest things that you think would be wrong for the world. And if you find something like that is actually wrong, that hits these controversies in a negative way that you want us to solve, send me the message. Okay.
And then the CIA will be in contact with y'all right after that.